We are back with part 12 of the Florida Seminole War Heritage Trail. And if you look in the description of the video, you can download a copy of the booklet published by the Florida Department of State. I helped write parts of it, and it was published 10 years ago. This is the 10th anniversary, so I want to revisit the sites, see what's there, what's not there, what should be added if we ever had another grant to do it again, and other points of interest that I think are worthy of mentioning. So let's look at the booklet here. Of course, our PDF version here, and go to the map in the center of the book. State of Florida, we are in Southwest Florida, the green area from Manatee, Bradenton, little inwards to Glades County, Hendry County, down south, Fort Myers, Lee County, Collier County, and all places in between. So we're going to have a very busy ride tonight. So let's get on with it. First up, we're going to Manatee County. And first place I want to show you is a historical marker for Fort Hammer from the Panic of 1849, Third Seminole War. Eventually became a community after that, named after Brigadier General Thomas Hammer, who died in the Mexican War. And apparently, some troops that were served under him, and also known as the Manatee Rangers being here. On the other side of the marker, Fort Hammer Military Road. Looks like somebody's working cleaning the marker or something there. From Fort Brooke to Fort Hammer, went through some of the other plantations. I noticed on the bottom it says, in memory of historian James L. Harrison Jr., by family and friends, 2001. I had met him back in the 1990s, and what an interesting individual. He had me research some stuff that, I had never heard about, which I thought was great, and researched it for him. But uh, he had some health issues, so I knew he was going to pass away. But he was in his 60s back then, and his father and his grandfather both had children late in life. His grandfather was born about 1860, and I think even knew David Levy Yulee. So, can you imagine if you uh, had a grandfather who 165 years ago today was born? Actually, my great-grandfather was born in 1860, so I'm just not too far from that point. Uh, Next place, we're going to talk about Braden Castle near Bradenton, where Bradenton gets the name. This is an old postcard from 1900. It was a tabby, which is like coquina uh, uh, construction here in Bradenton. They called it a castle just because it's very strong, fortified. Here is another postcard from it's postmarked 1959. Looks like there's a car parked in it. I don't know. Uh, and finally, there's a photograph. I took this about 2010, 2011. It looks like at some point the walls got knocked down there because they're kind of stacked on each other. There's houses in between. This is one of the oldest. It was originally a trailer park for tin can tourists, one of the oldest in the state of Florida. Here's a historical marker, Braden Castle, named after Dr. Joseph Braden, physician, native, came from Tallahassee to the Manatee River in the 1840s on a land grant, used slave labor to build the castle, two-story structure built of tabby composed of lime, sand, crushed shells. It was able to withstand siege under Seminoles who attacked it in the Third Seminole War. Heading south in Sarasota County in Venice, there's this park with this monument, and this is fairly new. I haven't seen this before. The Calusa and Seminole people, you can see Billy Bowleg's image up top, a Calusa Indian, a Seminole Indian. And in case you're wondering, it points to the Calusa and points to the Seminole if you're not familiar with either of them. And let's see. So another historical marker in Sarasota for Casey's Pass, named after Captain John C. Casey, Army officer who was Indian agent. You know, his job as Indian agent was to arrange removal of the Seminoles, but he was actually uh, very benevolent to them, and he was a good friend to Billy Bowlegs. Died in Tampa Bay of tuberculosis in 1856. Wanted to be buried on Egmont Key, um, but eventually his remains were shipped to New York State, and I found out that he's buried in New York. So, kind of interesting. Another thing is that he was fluent in the Seminoles language, Muskogee and Miccosukee, wrote a book that was he wanted to publish as a dictionary or a lexicon, kind of a mix of the both languages. It's more what you'd call street Muskogee or street Miccosukee language, more of a common type of linguistic fare. Um, so anyway, his name goes to Casey's Pass. Now, this is not in the Heritage Trail, but it should be. This is in Boca Grande, which is a barrier island that juts out into Charlotte Harbor, I think. It's north of Fort Myers. It's between Charlotte and Sarasota County. It's Gasparilla Island State Park. The lighthouse that you see right here on the point is a museum there, and they have an excellent exhibit on the Spanish Indians. In fact, when I saw it about 2009, it was the first exhibit I'd ever seen on the Spanish Indians that lived here on the island. Across the channel, which is right here in the image, is was the quarantine station for the ships coming in. In fact, a former coworker became park manager here who I was visiting at the time. He said, "You notice there's nobody swimming in the beach or the water at the point. And the reason why it's great tarpon fishing for one thing," he said, because he used to take boats out. Uh, and he said that right before I came to visit, they had captured a 13-foot long hammerhead shark right in this water right here. So that's why nobody's out there swimming. Going over to Hardee County, inland, old cattle country on the old Sand Ridge, Paynes Creek State Park. Uh, they have their event. It's actually going to be next January, end of January. And it was the one of the favorite events that I did. And the reason being is the local people that were involved in the event that we reenact, their descendants live in this area, and they were just a wealth of knowledge and information about the history. And I really like this photo because I know everyone in there. A lot of them have all gone their separate ways. Some of them have passed away. So this picture is kind of near and dear to my heart. Also, they have a museum visitor center, which one of our soldier reenactors, Matt, he's here pretending like he's the mannequin here in the museum. Okay, going down south to Soto County. I believe this is along Highway 17, US 17, Fort Ogden, a small community. It was a Seminole War fort, also from the Panic of 1849, or well, it might have been Second Seminole War, uh, named after, does it say? Um, anyway, this historical markers was right here in front of the post office about the only, uh, I think I actually heard it was actually moved. They have a community center here. But this older historical marker, even though it was cleaned up and repainted recently. It says 1976. Just show the language to you. Sometimes it's different language than we put nowadays. It says, as white settlers moved into Florida, demands increased for the removal of the Seminole Indians to a Western reservation. The Seminoles refused to cooperate. Oh, really? No, they just didn't want to leave their home. That's really what it is. Okay, over in what's this Highlands or Glade County, I can't remember which, west of the town of Okeechobee, Highway 98. Um, you have Fort Bassinger. In fact, this is where the highway crosses the Kissimmee River, right behind the marker here. It was Fort Bassinger, named after William Alon Bassinger, who was killed with Major Dade. The fort was established by Zachary Taylor in 1837. It later became the community of Bassinger, and it was one of the contenders for the Agricultural Museum, which was eventually established in Flagler County. Uh, but it's old cattle country out here. Now, not far away is Brighton Reservation, a Seminole Reservation in Brighton. And here we are, or here I am with a friend at Brighton Rodeo, which is held the third weekend in February. One of my favorite events to go to. It's outdoors. I like outdoors in this time of year. And if you go Brighton Reservation, they have the Veterans Museum. Here's the kind of the booklet or the program from the opening. And you can see the building, it's star-shaped. In front, they have some bronze statues by Brad Cooley and his father, son. Here's a couple of them, Osceola here, and they have different soldiers around there. The detail on these statues is excellent because the soldier from Desert Storm era, which is the uniform I wear, I could tell every detail on there. In fact, there's a few Easter eggs, like on Osceola on his bandolier bag. There's a modern Army button, of U.S. Army on there. But they have a small museum in here to the Seminole veterans, which of course covers the Seminole War. Uh, I really like this one. Down in, I think this is, well, it says erected by Polk County Historical Commission. I thought this was maybe Hendry County or Glades County. This is along Highway 78 that goes from Highway 29 or Highway 29's over here to Highway 27 from LaBelle and dumps out onto Highway 27 out in the middle of nowhere. 12-mile long highway, old cattle country here. And this historical marker to Billy Bowlegs III, which you can see lived about 103 years. There was an old historical marker here, which I think was taken out by a truck hitting the sign. And then, of course, I think the sign here was taken out by lawnmowers, which happens. And it was lost for a long time. I tried to find out where it was. And then I heard the county had it in storage. But I don't know if they ever put it back up or if they moved it to the cemetery. Actually, it'd be safer in the cemetery because out here it's just a target for errant trucks and lawnmowers. The cemetery is Ortona, and here is Billy Bowlegs III, the subject of the historical marker I showed you. His grave here, in fact, at this Seminole uh, cemetery here, mixed in with the regular cemetery, and it's actually the cemetery is built on the side of a mound complex. In the back of the cemetery, there's old indigenous mounds back there that connect on the cemetery, which I kind of think is neat. You have the old inhabitants and the newer inhabitants buried alongside the mounds. Fort Denoude, I think this is pronounced Denoude, along the Caloosahatchee River. This is west of the town of LaBelle. Historical marker here. It doesn't say when it was established, or I think it might have been established. Oh, it says Captain Bonneville. He was with the 7th Infantry, established Fort Denount in 1838. Well, that's strange because I don't think he got to Florida till 1839 when the 7th Infantry rotated to Florida. And so is active in the Third Seminole War along the Caloosahatchee, whichever state highway or county road this is on. I can't remember. It's right next to a drawbridge, so that sometimes the gate goes down. You can, if you're waiting there, you can stop and read the historical marker. It's way up on a pedestal like that, which I thought was unusual. Now, going back to the town of LaBelle is the other direction, a little east of LaBelle, is the historical marker for Fort Thompson. And I looked for it many times and never found it. And here I found it on the historical marker database. Of course, named after Colonel Alexander Thompson, who was killed at the Battle of Okeechobee in 1837, the highest ranking officer killed in the Second Seminole War, killed in battle, uh, head of the 6th Infantry at the Battle of Okeechobee. And so you can see it's like right in the cabbage palm here. Here's a backing up a little. That's why I never found the marker. It's just kind of hiding among the cabbage palms right here. Now, north of Big Cypress Reservation, I think it's like County Road 833. It's called Sam Jones Trail. It's a road that really it goes very straight north-south road. And they found out that it kind of goes along a ridge trail. It was the old wagon trail. Now it's the modern county highway. And they found out that was the old trail used by Sam Jones to come down into the area named Devil's Garden. And I mentioned Sam Jones earlier. The Seminole tribe put up a historical marker here. And I had to borrow the image from Morris Foster. Here he is at the dedication. It's right in front of, I think it's uh, Ale- Alico Farms. I think it is right along the county county road here. If somebody could do me a favor and put this on the historical marker database or waymarking website and get this on there. I haven't been there in a few years. If I was, I'd do that right now if I was able to, because I definitely want to be on there. Now, it's kind of funny because I thought I had a picture of it. I looked on my computer, I looked on Facebook, I thought I had a YouTube video, but it seems to all disappeared, which I had to borrow uh, my friend's photograph right here. And I figured out why, because Sam Jones must have taken it off my computer. And here's Sam Jones right here. That's a bit scary. Well, let's go to the Fort Myers, Lee County historical marker for Billy Bowlegs, who lived in this area. They have several markers here. They called the Third Seminole War, they called it the Billy Bowlegs War because he attacked Lieutenant George Hartsuff in 1855, and that was the start of the conflict. George Hartsuff, he was a Union officer at the Battle of Antietam, and he died in 1870 from bullets that were never removed from him that Billy Bowlegs gave him. In front of the Fort Myers Courthouse, there's a historical marker for Fort Myers. Here, of course, Second Seminole War Fort, one of the cities in Florida that retain the fort in front of it. And Fort Myers also had a military cemetery. It said the graves were moved. Apparently not. It seemed like in Florida when they say that the graves are moved. Apparently, when they say that, not all of them are moved, and they always end up finding more. As in the case in Tampa, that's happened several times. Now in Cape Coral, here's a historical marker, Harney's Point, and there was a armistice called between the uh, U.S. Army and the Seminoles Miccosukes. in 1839. So they were going to establish a trading post on the Caloosahatchee River, what's now Cape Coral. Uh, Colonel William S. Harney goes down here with his dragoon soldiers, and they're sleeping one night. And Chikaika and Billy Bowlegs attack the army party and kill about 2 dozen of them. One of the It's the third largest death count of a battle with the U.S. Army in the Second Seminole War, behind Dade's battle in Okeechobee. And so there's this, looks like it needs a new paint job. And so if you go down south to Naples, Collier County Museum, this is right behind the courthouse. And this has some excellent exhibits on the Second Seminole War. In fact, the museum covers a complex area with several buildings, even has a little miniature reconstructed fort. There are 5 museums in the Collier County Museums, and all of them are worth going to, and you can spend hours at any of them. So you can spend a week down in Naples visiting a different museum every day. Plus, the Ah-Tah-Thi-Ki Museum is not far away, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. Here it is in the museum in Naples. You have a mannequin of a Seminole warrior getting ready to load his musket. And right behind him, there's a soldier mannequin. But excellent exhibits here. Now a few miles away, and also in downtown Naples, about a mile or two away, is Naples Depot, train depot, has an excellent museum here inside. You see a Seminole man in a dugout canoe. Here's some exhibits from the early 20th century. You see the Seminole patchwork behind him. That's a jacket that was worn by Corey Osceola in a skirt and blouse. His wife, Juanita Osceola, are known as the elders or patriarch and matriarch of the Seminole community that is in Naples today. They have a Seminoles community. It's not a reservation, but a very large community. Down to Marco Island, you have the Marco Island Historical Museum, and it's been updated in the last few years, has some excellent exhibits. Marco Island was excavated in 1895 by an eccentric archaeologist who went native, Hamilton Cushing, and he excavated some beautiful wooden objects. And this museum is about that. The Calusa has a little bit about the Seminole people. This 6 foot high replica of the Key Marco cat, which the Key Marco cat is a little 6-inch tall wooden statue of the anthropomorphic cat with human legs and human hands. Also in Collier County, going down Highway 41, the Tamiami Trail, you have Collier Seminole State Park. There's a reconstructed blockhouse. When the park was created, the blockhouse here was built in 1940 by the Collier County Parks and Recreations. In fact, the blockhouse kind of predates the park. They built the blockhouse and a memorial here on the park, and then the park was closed for about 3 years while they built the campground and some roads and reopened it. It became a state park shortly after the county handed it over to the state. And on the bottom floor of the blockhouse, there's some interpretive panels of the local area, the cultural and natural resources. The top of the blockhouse, because it's not wheelchair accessible, they can't open that to the public, but it serves as the office to the biologist. In fact, it was my office at one point. There, I had a desk in there too. And going down Highway 41, take a right, head south on Highway 29 into Everglades City. You get to Everglades City Hall right here, and there's a museum across the street which we'll visit in a minute. See the bricks in front of the City Hall, and there's one for Deaconess Bedell right here, Deaconess Harriet Bedell. We'll see her in a minute here. Go across the street. The old laundry building is the Everglades City Museum. It has some exhibits on the Seminoles. There renovating what used to be the bank in Everglades City. Everglades City no longer has a bank. It served as a hotel or bed and breakfast for a while, and then it was sold and they're renovating. I think the museum, I don't know if it'll move in there or if it will stay in the old workers' laundry. Here's a exhibit they have in there of Harriet Deacon Spadell. She came into Everglades area. She was actually retired at that point, Episcopalian deaconess, and she wasn't so much a missionary as saved the soul and hit him on the head with the Bible, but she provided education, school for the Seminoles, had a library where they could borrow books out of, set up a market for the Seminoles to sell their arts and crafts. And he even did mail order. You found in the archives, I found a list of her items that she would sell for arts and crafts. So really created a market, alternative for the Seminoles to make their arts and crafts and sell them, and actually get a business going for them. And she's fondly remembered by the Seminole tribe and the descendants today. Oops, almost got ahead. Heading down the Tamiami Trail, going about another, I don't know, it's about another 40 miles in Collier County in the middle of Big Cypress Preserve. You have Monument Lake, its campground is part of Big Cypress. At the front, there's a historical marker for the 1936 Seminole Conference. So this is 100 years after the death of Major Dade, in February 22nd, 1936, 100 years after General Gaines was held up on the Withlacoochee River. Florida Governor David Schatz and also Collier County Commissioner David Graham Copeland, who was also worked for Baron Collier, wanted to meet with the Seminole uh, people or Seminole and Miccosukee people out here. The tribes were not incorporated at this point. Many of the elders or the leaders in the Seminole and Miccosukee tribe did not speak English at that time. So they picked some representatives. He did, Corey Osceola and Josie Billy, to speak with them. So they met there. And the governor and Mr. Copeland asked the Seminoles, "What can we do for you?" And their answer was simple, said, "Just leave us alone." We had enough of you guys. And here's a backing out. There's a stone monument at one time that Graham Copeland put up in honor of the meeting. Used to have a bronze plaque on that. That was stolen decades ago, so they have a historical marker there instead. So that's the photographs. Let's look at some of the websites of some of the things that I didn't mention in the photographs because I didn't have photographs of these places. First, let's go back up to Bradenton, Manatee County, Manatee Village in Bradenton. Well worth a visit here. It's they have some of the historical buildings here. Um, and in fact, the oldest county courthouse is here. It's pretty much just a clapboard building, small, looks like a small house. I think it dates to about 1860. Uh, what just a old building, but well worth the time to go here. I highly recommend it, and well, I'll recommend a lot of places. Also in Manatee County, Bradenton is the Bishop, was it the Bishop Museum of Science and Nature? And I have not been there, but I'm told they do have some Seminole exhibits. Looks like a really good place to take the family, spend an afternoon. Also, south along the Manatee River, this part of the Florida State Parks, Gamble Plantation, or known as the Drew P. Benjamin Memorial at Gamble Plantation. It's the plantation house here built by Robert Gamble. His father was friends of Tiger Tail, and I did a previous video of the his father's plantation up in Tallahassee area. Junior Robert Gamble moved down here. In fact, was friends with the Seminoles, and at one point, some of the Seminoles who were not friends with him came in and attacked the mansion. In fact, they have a original photograph of Billy Bowlegs here in the museum, so it's worth stopping by and seeing there. Back to Boca Grande, Gasparilla Island State Park, right here, and you can look at all these websites. I'll have links in the description. Yes, okay, that's what it is. It's mainland by Charlotte Harbor and Pine Island Sound. So that's uh, Pine Island and Boca Grande Island, where the narrow waterway between them, where the Lighthouse Museum is. So let's go inland to Zolfo Springs, Hardee County. Zolfo Springs, small community, Pioneer Park, the Cracker Trail Museum. It looks just like a regular old concrete block house. Don't let that fool you. This is, I consider, a top-notch museum, even though it looks like a mom and pop museum with index cards and descriptions. It had one of the most best curated exhibits of anything I'd ever seen. They did a fantastic job of curating all the objects that have, even though it's index cards and typed out descriptions, detailed descriptions of every item they have on display and where it came from and explaining what it is. And they have some rare stuffs that rare items in here dealing with the Cracker cattle history and some Seminole Indian objects too. Like, for example, they had a couple flutes, Seminole Indian flutes, which are, I don't even think I've seen those anywhere else other than this museum. So one thing I talked about in another video was Fort Center on the west side of Lake Okeechobee. If you go up Highway 78, it's kind of in the middle between Okeechobee and, gosh, what is it? Moorhaven or whatever that town is. Fort Center, out in the middle of nowhere. Pretty much they just have walking trails, so that's why I went to the Florida Hikes website. Really had more information than anything else. A huge mound complex was built here, had a charnel platform on top of the pond. Eventually, the platform rotted away, and the wooden objects from the platform fell into the pond. The archaeologists found these fantastic wooden objects like they found on Marco Island, believed to be similar to, I think the last video I mentioned, Big Mound City, similar to that. Second Seminole War, they built Fort Center here, named after Lieutenant J.P. Center, who was killed at the Battle of Okeechobee. So it wasn't established in 1835. It's more like 1838. In fact, Lieutenant Center, he's buried with the other officers, the remains at Jefferson Barracks. Okay, let's go to the Seminole Tribe, Big Cypress Reservation, the biggest reservation that the Seminoles have of their six reservations. The Ah-Tah-Thi-Ki Museum, what I consider the gem of the Seminole Tribe. Here's their webpage. Check it out. Their collections that they have here, they have an online collections that have thousands of objects that you can spend hours looking up. And here's an ad here. American Indigenous Arts Celebration. It's always the first weekend in November. It is a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. But I went here when the museum opened in 1997, and I used to live not too far away, and so I'd visit quite often. I think they're redoing the boardwalk. Was there? Yeah, there's a picture of that. So I heard it was closed at the moment as they redo that. After 30 years, it's due for some some work, and it's like a mile and a quarter long, and it was fun just going out there and walking the whole loop. Now, of course, I mentioned north of uh, Big Cypress Reservation. I mentioned the Sam Jones Trail. Here's a webpage I've linked going all about Sam Jones, which I mentioned in the other video about Treetops Park right here. And there's Billy L. Cypress, who was the original director of the museum. He passed away in 2004. Used to narrate the Seminole side at the Dade Battle reenactment. And all about Sam Jones. Going back over to Fort Myers once again. Here's Fort Myers Cemetery, the old cemetery which is mentioned in our heritage guide. Also mentioned in the guide about Fort Myers, Southwest Florida Museum of History. Uh, I wasn't very impressed with their Seminole War exhibit, mainly because they had a picture of William Jenkins Worth and they had it mislabeled as Colonel Twiggs, which I have plenty of images of both those guys. I've been to a lot of places where they've been stationed, and I knew one apart from the other. Later on, I found out that they had gotten it from the U.S. Army website that had mislabeled. But if you've researched the people like I have, then you know the difference. So I wasn't too happy of that. Uh, but check it out if you're in Fort Myers. Going to my favorite, of course, the Collier County Museum, all the different museums that they have. And here's the webpage, of course, about the Museum of the Everglades. I don't recognize those skyscrapers back there. Maybe that's the beach. Anyway, here are the five museums. They're all free admission. You could spend 5 days in Naples visiting all five of them and take a 6 day and go over and visit the Ah-Tah-Thi-Ki Museum, which is only 90 miles away from Naples. And also in Collier County, it's kind of at the border of Collier and Lee County up near Bonita Springs, is Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, which is run by the Audubon Society. And this is not in the Heritage book, but when John and Mary Lou were putting the book together, they said if you want to see Florida in the original virgin forest, the original cypress swamp that the soldiers saw while they were trying to or hopelessly searching for the Seminoles, this is what Florida looked like back 150, 160 years ago, before all the large cypress were chopped down. They have a on one of the big cypresses back there. They have what they call the super ghost orchid, a ghost orchid that has about anywhere from 7 to 12 blooms at one time. It's the most blooms that any one plant has. You can't walk up to it, but they have like those viewing binoculars at that point where you can look at through the binoculars. And as a member of Audubon, I would go here and you get half off the admission. The boardwalk is 2.25 miles long. It goes through the cypress. Absolutely stunning. Go to it during different times of the year and see at winter the cypress trees lose their needles. And in summer it's green and shady, but bring a bug suit during the summer. So I absolutely love that. So that is the end of the Seminole War Heritage Trail Guide. Being the 10th anniversary, I told you about some things that are not in there, some things that could be put in there if we ever did it again, if we had a grant to redo that. But that's enough for now. And next week, back to your regular scheduled historical topics. Thank you for coming along for the ride.